A nameplate on a Wall Street skyscraper reads Thorn Dynamics. A beautiful pregnant woman smiles holding a set of keys. But in the world of the ultra-rich, loyalty is a currency easily spent. What happens when a self-made millionaire, a man who has everything, decides he wants more? When he takes his young, ambitious mistress to the one place he shouldn't, the brand new, multi-million-dollar penthouse his pregnant wife just bought as a surprise for their growing family. He thought it was their secret. He thought he was in control. What he didn't know was that in the silent, watchful eyes of state-of-the-art security cameras, every whisper, every touch, and every betrayal was being recorded. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a story of a woman scorned a meticulous plan for justice and the digital evidence that brought a titan to his knees. Eleanor Sterling Thorne believed she was living a modern fairy tale. At 32, she was the elegant, intelligent wife of Marcus Thorne, the charismatic 40-year-old founder and CEO of Thorn Dynamics, a fintech empire that had disrupted Wall Street. Their life was a curated gallery of success, a sprawling mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, a fleet of luxury cars, and a prominent place in New York's philanthropic circles. Marcus was the architect of their wealth, a man whose ambition was as vast as the city skyline viewed from his corner office. Eleanor, with her background in art history and a keen eye for design, was the architect of their life, transforming their houses into homes and his raw success into refined legacy. Now 6 months pregnant with their first child, a son, Eleanor was secretly orchestrating her masterpiece. For weeks she had been working with a discreet real estate agent, Brenda Jenkins, to acquire a property she knew Marcus had once coveted, the pinnacle penthouse of the new Orion Tower on Park Avenue. It wasn't just another asset. It was a statement, a nest for their new family, a surprise that would anchor them in the heart of the city where they'd built their empire. Using a trust she had established years ago with inheritance from her grandparents, Eleanor had made the purchase herself. The $28 million price tag was staggering, but she knew it was more than an investment in property. It was an investment in their future. She had spent the last month overseeing a bespoke, private renovation, turning the stark modern space into a warm, inviting sanctuary. She imagined Marcus's face when she finally gave him the key. She pictured them standing on the terrace, his arm around her, her hand on her swollen belly, looking out over the city that was theirs. "Eleanor, darling, I'm going to be late tonight." Marcus's voice, smooth as aged whiskey, came through the phone one Tuesday evening. "Board dinner. We're closing the Q3 projections. Don't wait up." "Okay, my love," Eleanor replied, her voice warm. She was at the penthouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Just be safe. I'll have some tea and wait." "You're an angel," he said, and the line went dead. A familiar pang of loneliness pricked her heart, but she quickly dismissed it. This was the price of his genius, the sacrifice required for the life they led. He worked tirelessly. She knew that. She ran a hand over a newly installed bookshelf, the wood still smelling of varnish and promise. She had chosen every finish, every fixture. The smart home system was top of the line, a Verisure Pro HD network, with motion sensors, door contacts, and high-definition cameras covering every main area: the living room, the kitchen, the entryway, the terrace. She'd justified the expense to the contractor as a necessity for protecting their future child. The system was linked directly to an app on her phone, a fortress of digital security she could control from anywhere. Later that night, curled up in their king-sized bed in Greenwich, she found herself unable to sleep. It was nearly 2 a.m. The board dinner should have ended hours ago. She scrolled through her phone, looking at photos from their last vacation in Portofino. A notification popped up from a society blog, a photo gallery from a charity gala held that evening. She tapped on it casually, and her heart stopped. There in the background of a photo of a prominent socialite was Marcus. He wasn't with his board members. He was standing close to a young woman, a striking brunette in a slinky emerald green dress. His head was tilted towards hers, a private smile on his face that Eleanor knew all too well. It was the smile he used when he was captivated, utterly charmed. Eleanor zoomed in. The woman was young, maybe mid-20s, and she was gazing up at Marcus with an expression of pure adoration. Eleanor's breath hitched. It could be innocent. A colleague, a client's daughter. But something in his posture, the proprietary way his hand rested on the small of her back, felt like a betrayal. She quickly searched for Thorn Dynamics on social media. A few clicks led her to the company's LinkedIn page, and then to a post about their new summer intern program. And there she was, Chloe Decker, an MBA student from Wharton, interning in the acquisitions department. The photo was a professional headshot, but the eyes were the same. Ambitious, adoring. Eleanor's mind raced, connecting disparate dots from the past few months. The late nights that were becoming more frequent. The sudden scent of a different perfume, a light floral one, not her own woody amber scent on his suit jacket one evening, which he'd explained away as hugging a client. The new secret password on his personal laptop. She felt a cold dread seep into her bones, a feeling so alien in her carefully constructed world of warmth and love. The penthouse, her grand surprise, suddenly felt less like a gift and more like a gilded monument to her own naivety. She closed her eyes, her hand instinctively cradling her stomach, protecting her son from a world that had suddenly, terrifyingly tilted on its axis. The fairy tale was starting to show its cracks, and through them, a much darker story was beginning to emerge. The discovery of Chloe Decker was a poison that seeped slowly into Eleanor's bloodstream. For the next 2 weeks, she lived in a state of high alert, a silent observer in her own home. She became a detective of nuance, an archaeologist of her husband's lies. She noticed how he angled his phone away from her when a text came through the vague answers about his lunch meetings, the way he'd started taking calls on the terrace, his back turned to the house. Every excuse, every platitude now sounded hollow. "It's just work stress, darling," he'd say, kissing her forehead. But his eyes didn't meet hers. They seemed to look straight through her, focused on a horizon she was no longer a part of. The pain of her suspicion was a physical ache, a constant companion to the kicks and flutters of her unborn child. But beneath the pain, a steely resolve was beginning to form. She was not the type of woman to weep and wither. She was a Sterling before she was a Thorn, and the Sterlings were survivors. Her grandmother, who had left her the trust, had been a formidable woman who always said, "Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, and darling, always know where the exits are." Eleanor decided she needed more than suspicion. She needed facts. She needed proof. One morning, after Marcus left for the city, she made a call. Not to her sister, not to a friend, but to a name she found through a discreet referral from her family's old estate lawyer. "Davies Investigations," a gruff professional voice answered. "How can I help you?" "My name is Eleanor Sterling," she said, her own voice sounding surprisingly steady. "I need to hire a private investigator." Mr. Davies was a man who seemed to have been carved from granite and cynicism. He was ex-NYPD with eyes that missed nothing. They met in a quiet, anonymous cafe in the West Village. Eleanor, dressed down in a simple cashmere sweater, and jeans, laid out her situation calmly and concisely, omitting no detail. She spoke of Marcus, of Chloe, of the late nights and the secrets. Davies listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took a slow sip of his black coffee. "Mrs. Thorne," he began, his voice low. "In my line of work, 99% of the time, the gut feeling is right. The question isn't usually if, but how deep it goes. What do you want to achieve?" "I want the truth," Eleanor said, her jaw tight. "All of it. I need a timeline. I need to know where they go, what they do. I need irrefutable evidence. I need to know exactly what I am dealing with before I make a single move." "Understood," Davies said. "It'll be discreet. You'll have a full report with photographic and video evidence where possible. It's not cheap." "That is not a concern," Eleanor stated flatly. Davies got to work immediately. Within days, the first reports started coming in via a secure, encrypted email server. They were clinical detached and utterly devastating. Lunch meetings at posh, out-of-the-way restaurants in Soho that stretched for hours. Marcus's driver dropping Chloe off at her luxury apartment building in Chelsea, an apartment far beyond the means of a typical intern, long after midnight. Photos of them laughing their heads close together. A receipt from Cartier for a love bracelet billed to a corporate expense account. Each email was a fresh stab to Eleanor's heart. Yet with each piece of evidence, her grief began to calcify into something harder, colder. She was no longer just a wife. She was a strategist. Meanwhile, the penthouse renovations were complete. The contractors were gone, the dust had settled, and the space was perfect, gleaming and silent. It was her sanctuary, and she now realized her greatest strategic asset. The state-of-the-art Verisha security system she had installed was fully operational. From the app on her phone, she could view a live feed from any of the 5 cameras review recorded footage, stored securely in the cloud, and receive instant motion alerts. She hadn't told Marcus about the penthouse yet. Her original plan to surprise him felt like a bitter joke now. Instead, she was waiting. Davies had told her that Marcus and Chloe were getting bolder, more careless. It was only a matter of time before they made a mistake she could use. The moment came on a Friday afternoon. Marcus called her around 3 p.m. "Sweetheart, terrible news. The servers for the London office just crashed. It's a total meltdown. I've got to fly out there tonight on the company jet. A few of the top engineers and I are going to have to pull an all-nighter at the office to manage the crisis before we leave. I probably won't even be able to come home. I'll head straight to Teterboro from here. I'll call you when I land." His voice was a symphony of feigned stress and urgency. The old Eleanor would have cooed with sympathy and packed him a virtual bag full of support. The new Eleanor simply said, "Oh, Marcus, that sounds awful. Please be careful. I love you. I love you too, Angel. More than anything. He lied." After hanging up, she immediately sent a text to Davies. "He says he's flying to London tonight. Office crisis. Please confirm." Less than an hour later, Davies's reply came. "Subject is not at Thorne Dynamics HQ. His car just dropped him at the corner of 57th and Park. He entered the Veuve Clicquot salon a moment ago. He is not alone. The intern, Chloe Decker, met him inside. And Mrs. Thorne, his jet is grounded at Teterboro for scheduled maintenance. There is no flight to London." Eleanor stared at the message, her blood running cold. He wasn't just lying. He was constructing an elaborate fiction to spend the weekend with his mistress. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She sat in the quiet of her Greenwich home, the silence pressing in on her. Where would they go for their secret weekend? A hotel, the Plaza, the St. Regis. They were too public. He was too well known. They would need somewhere private, somewhere no one would see them. And then a horrifying thought, a cold, slithering premonition entered her mind. Her penthouse. the one place in New York that was luxurious, completely private, and utterly unknown to anyone but her agent and the contractors. But how would he even get in? She remembered with a jolt the spare keycard she had given to the head contractor, which he had returned to her last week. But there was another keycard, the master building access card she had given Marcus a month ago, telling him it was for a future investment property she was looking at. He had tucked it into his wallet with a dismissive wave. "Whatever you think is best, darling." He had probably forgotten all about it. Until now. Her fingers trembled as she opened the Verisure security app on her phone. All cameras were offline, showing a peaceful, empty home. She armed the system, ensuring motion notifications were active and set to the highest sensitivity. For hours she waited. She didn't eat. She didn't move. She just sat, staring at her phone, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. At 8:17 p.m., her phone buzzed violently, the screen flashing with a red banner. Alert motion detected in penthouse living area. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She tapped the notification. The app loaded, and the live feed from the living room camera blinked into existence. Her creation, her dream, her sanctuary. And standing in the middle of it were her husband and his mistress. The image on her phone screen was crystal clear, the high-definition feed rendering the scene with a cruel, intimate precision. The living room of her penthouse, which she had designed as a haven of soft creams, rich woods, and gentle lighting, was now the stage for her life's most profound betrayal. Marcus stood with his arms outstretched, a look of smug pride on his face. "So what do you think?" he asked, his voice a faint but discernible murmur through the phone's speaker. "I told you I had a surprise for you." Chloe Decker pirouetted in the center of the room, her emerald dress a slash of vibrant color against the neutral palette. She looked up at the soaring ceilings, her mouth agape. "Marcus, my God, this place it's unbelievable. Is this yours?" Eleanor felt a wave of nausea. "Let's just say it's a new acquisition," Marcus said, walking towards the custom-built bar Eleanor had spent weeks designing with a craftsman from Italy. He opened the Sub-Zero refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of champagne. Veuve Clicquot. Of course. A little private getaway for us. No one in the world knows about this place. Eleanor's hand, resting on her stomach, tightened into a fist. I know she thought the words a silent, venomous scream in her mind. "The woman carrying your son knows." Chloe ran her hand along the back of the velvet sofa Eleanor had chosen. "It's so sophisticated. Your wife has amazing taste." The comment was a deliberate, calculated barb, and it landed perfectly. Marcus laughed, a short, dismissive sound that cut Eleanor deeper than any shout could have. Eleanor. Oh, darling, no. This wasn't her. Her taste is more traditional. Stuffy, old money Connecticut. No, this was all me. I wanted something sleek, modern. Something for our future. Our future. The words echoed in the silent Greenwich house. Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs as if she'd been physically struck. He wasn't just cheating on her. He was erasing her. He was stealing her dreams, her accomplishments, her very taste and identity, and handing them to this young, vacuous girl as a gift. Chloe glided over to him, wrapping her arms around his neck as he expertly popped the cork. The sound was a small explosion, a celebration of their deception. "To us, then," Chloe whispered, her lips close to his ear. "And to our future, in our beautiful new home." "To us," Marcus echoed, pouring the golden liquid into 2 flutes. They clinked their glasses together, the delicate sound, a death knell for Eleanor's marriage. She watched, mesmerized by the horror, as they drank the champagne. She watched as Marcus led Chloe to the floor-to-ceiling windows. He pointed out landmarks, claiming the view as his own conquest. He put his arm around Chloe's waist, pulling her close. His hand moved from her waist down her back, settling possessively on her hip. They kissed. It wasn't a furtive peck. It was a long, slow, passionate kiss, a kiss of ownership and shared secrets, silhouetted against the glittering lights of New York City, the city Eleanor loved, in the home she had built, with the man she had loved. Something inside Eleanor broke, but it wasn't a fragile, shattering break. It was a cold, clean snap, like a bone setting itself into a new, stronger position. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated, replaced by an icy calm. The grief, the shock, the pain, they were all still there, but they were now packed in ice, preserved and weaponized. She swiped the screen, her movements deft and mechanical. She navigated the app's menu, her mind working with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. She located the recording of the past 10 minutes. She checked the file size. She saw the cloud icon indicating it was already backed up to a secure off-site server. She initiated a second download, sending a copy of the high-resolution video file directly to her personal encrypted hard drive. Then she did it again, sending it to a newly created password-protected cloud account under a name Marcus would never guess her grandmother's maiden name. She saved everything: the entry, the conversation, the toast, the kiss, every single damning second. She switched the camera feed, tapping through the different views. Kitchen camera showed them leaving the empty glasses on the marble island she had hand-selected. Hallway camera captured them, walking his arm slung casually over her shoulder towards the master bedroom. The bedroom she had designed for her and her husband for their new baby. The camera in the bedroom itself she had thankfully decided against activating. Some things she did not need to see. The hallway view was enough. The closed door was a final, brutal confirmation. She leaned back on her sofa, her phone held loosely in her hand. The immediate raw emotion had subsided, leaving a vast, empty space in its wake. And into that space, a plan began to bloom. It was no longer a question of confronting him, of tearful accusations and hollow apologies. That was the old Eleanor's script. The new Eleanor, the one forged in the last 10 minutes of digital surveillance, was playing a different game entirely. This wasn't about saving her marriage. It was about avenging it. It was about protecting her son and securing their future from the man who was so carelessly trying to discard them. He thought he was a titan, a master of the universe. He thought he was untouchable. He had no idea he was just a pawn in a game. He didn't even know he was playing. The board was set, the pieces were in motion, and the digital witness had just given her checkmate. Her thumb hovered over her contact list. She scrolled past her sister, past her mother, past her friends. She stopped on a name that represented not comfort, but power. A name she had been given by the same lawyer who had recommended Mr. Davies for a situation if things get complicated. Isabella Rossi, the most feared divorce attorney in New York City. Eleanor pressed the call button. It was nearly 9 p.m. on a Friday night, but she had a feeling Miss Rossi would answer. People like Isabella Rossi were always ready for a war. And Eleanor Sterling Thorne was finally ready to declare one. Rossi, a sharp, no-nonsense voice, answered on the second ring. Ms. Rossi. Eleanor said, her voice devoid of any tremor. My name is Eleanor Sterling Thorne. We have not met, but we have a mutual acquaintance. I find myself in need of your services, and I have evidence that I believe will make for a very, very short conversation with my husband. Isabella Rossi's office on the 50th floor of the Solo building had a panoramic view of Central Park, but the woman herself was far more intimidating than the view. Sharp, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, with dark hair pulled back in a severe chignon, Isabella exuded an aura of lethal competence. She didn't offer tea or condolences. She offered a legal pad and a pen. "Lay it all out for me, Mrs. Thorne," she said, her voice cutting through the silence of the room. "From the beginning? And please be specific. The devil and the settlement is in the details." For the next hour, Eleanor spoke. She recounted everything with the precision of a CEO delivering a quarterly report. She detailed the structure of her trust, the purchase of the penthouse, solely in her name, the installation of the security system. She detailed the hiring of Mr. Davies, presenting a folder with his printed reports, the dates, the times, the Cartier receipts. And then she took out her tablet. "This is from Friday night," she said, and pressed play. Isabella Rossi leaned forward, her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, fixed on the screen. She watched the entire 10-minute clip without a word. She saw Marcus Thorne's smug pronouncements, his dismissal of his wife's taste, his toast to a future with his mistress. She watched the kiss. When the video ended, she leaned back in her chair, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. It was the smile of a shark that had just scented blood in the water. "My God," Isabella breathed a rare note of admiration in her voice. "Eleanor, may I call you Eleanor? Most women come to me with tear-stained selfies and angry text messages. You come to me with a notarized confession filmed in 4K. Buying that penthouse in your name, under your own trust before this happened, installing that camera system. That wasn't just smart, that was genius." "He underestimated me," Eleanor said simply. "They always do," Isabella replied, her eyes gleaming. "Marcus Thorne is a public figure. His company, Thorne Dynamics, is his entire identity. Its stock is built on an image of stability foresight and ruthless intelligence. This footage, this doesn't just make him a cheater, it makes him a fool, a reckless, arrogant fool who celebrates with champagne in a trap he didn't even see." Isabella stood up and began to pace, her energy filling the room. "We are not going to file for a simple divorce. That's for civilians. This is a corporate dissolution. We are going to dismantle him. Quietly at first, then all at once." The plan they formulated over the next 2 hours was a masterpiece of legal and psychological warfare. Phase 1. The deep dive. Isabella would bring in a team of forensic accountants, the best in the business. "Davies found the Cartier receipt on a corporate card," she explained. "That's the tip of the iceberg. Men like Marcus, when they get careless in their personal lives, get careless in their professional lives. I guarantee you he's been funding this entire affair with company money. The apartment in Chelsea, the dinners, the gifts. It's not just infidelity, it's embezzlement, it's fraud. That's our leverage. It gives us power not just over his personal assets, but over his position at Thorne Dynamics." Phase 2. The silent siege. Eleanor would continue to play the part of the devoted, slightly oblivious pregnant wife. Marcus had returned from his London trip on Sunday evening, feigning exhaustion and spinning tales of server rooms and transatlantic stress. Eleanor had welcomed him home, made him soup, and listened with a serene smile, all the while knowing he was lying through his teeth. She had to maintain this facade. They needed him to remain comfortable and confident, with no idea that an army was massing at his gates. "Can you do it?" Isabella asked, her gaze intense. "Can you live the lie for a little while longer? Can you look him in the eye and not let him see the abyss?" Eleanor thought of her son. She thought of Marcus laughing as he erased her from her own life. "Yes," she said, her voice like ice. "I can." Phase 3. The reveal. This would not be a private confrontation. "There will be no tearful showdown in the living room," Isabella declared. "That gives him the chance to control the narrative, to beg, to manipulate. No. We choose the time and we choose the place. It must be public. It must be devastating. It must strip him of his power in the very arena where he derives his strength." They settled on the perfect venue, the upcoming Thorn Dynamics Annual Innovation Gala, a massive press and investor event scheduled in 3 weeks. It was Marcus's signature event where he would unveil the company's new AI-driven trading platform. The press, the board of directors, key investors, everyone who mattered in his world would be there. While Isabella's team of financial bloodhounds went to work, Eleanor focused on her role. She played the part of a lifetime. She discussed baby names with Marcus, feigned excitement over nursery furniture, and rubbed her belly with a gentle smile when he was in the room. Each day was a performance, and with each lie, he told her her resolve hardened. Davies continued his surveillance feeding information to Isabella's team. They discovered Chloe Decker's Chelsea apartment was being leased by a shell corporation funded directly from a Thorn Dynamics marketing slush fund. They found records of lavish trips to St. Bart's and Aspen, all coded as investor relations. The forensic accountants found more. Marcus had been using company funds as his personal piggy bank for years, but his spending had escalated dramatically in the last 6 months, coinciding perfectly with the start of his affair with Chloe. He had become sloppy, arrogant, and entitled. 2 days before the gala, Isabella called Eleanor for a final strategy meeting. The file on her desk was now 6 inches thick. "We have him, Eleanor," Isabella said, her voice humming with triumph. "We have him on breach of fiduciary duty wire, fraud and embezzlement. The infidelity is almost quaint by comparison. Tomorrow night, Marcus Thorn is going to give the speech of his life, and then we are going to give him ours." Eleanor walked out of Isabella's office and into the crisp autumn air. She felt a profound sense of calm. She was no longer a victim of her husband's betrayal. She was the architect of his reckoning. She hailed a cab, and instead of heading back to Greenwich, she gave a different address. "The Orion Tower on Park Avenue, please." She needed to see it one more time before the battle. She let herself into the penthouse. It was silent, pristine, and beautiful. It was no longer a dream home, nor was it a crime scene. It was a monument to her own strength. It was the place she had lost her fairy tale, but found herself. She walked out onto the terrace, the cool wind on her face, and looked out over the city. Tomorrow that city would learn who Marcus Thorn really was. And more importantly, it would learn who Eleanor Sterling was. The grand ballroom of the Cipriani on 42nd Street was a sea of power and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over hundreds of guests in black tie attire. Journalists lined the velvet ropes, their cameras flashing. Members of the Thorn Dynamics Board of Directors, titans of finance and industry, mingled with investors, their conversations a low hum of anticipation. This was Marcus Thorn's kingdom, and he was its undisputed king. He stood near the stage, a glass of champagne in hand, radiating confidence. He was at the top of his game. His company was about to launch a product that would redefine the market, and his beautiful pregnant wife was on his arm. Eleanor was a vision in a custom-made deep sapphire gown that draped elegantly over her 7-month pregnancy. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and her smile was serene. To any observer, they were the ultimate power couple. Marcus squeezed her hand. "You look breathtaking tonight, darling. Absolutely breathtaking. And you look like you're on top of the world, my love," she replied, her voice smooth and even. She met his eyes, and for a fraction of a second, she let him see a flicker of the ice behind her smile. He seemed momentarily puzzled, but then a colleague clapped him on the back and the moment passed. She scanned the room. She saw Chloe Decker standing near the back with other junior-level employees. Chloe was watching them, a possessive glint in her eye, a faint smirk on her lips. She believed she was the secret winner of a game Eleanor didn't even know she was playing. The irony was almost too delicious. The presentations began. After the CFO gave a glowing report, the COO stepped up to introduce the man of the hour. And now a man whose vision continues to propel us into the future, our founder and CEO, Marcus Thorne. Applause thundered through the ballroom as Marcus took the stage. He was a master showman, charismatic and compelling. He spoke of innovation, of disruption, of a future powered by Thorne dynamics. He was met with rapturous applause. "Thank you," he said, beaming. "This is a testament to our incredible team, our loyal investors, and of course my beautiful wife, Eleanor, my constant source of inspiration." He gestured to her, and a spotlight found her in the crowd. She smiled graciously, inclining her head as the room applauded her. As Marcus began to take questions from the press, Eleanor gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to a woman standing near the ballroom entrance. Isabella Rossi, looking like a high-fashion executioner in a black Chanel suit, strode into the room. She was flanked by two stern-looking men in dark suits. They didn't stop at the ropes. They walked directly purposefully towards the stage. The reporters, sensing a disruption, turned their cameras. The low hum of conversation in the room faltered. Marcus, mid-sentence, saw them approaching. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Excuse me," he said into the microphone. "Can I help you?" Isabella reached the foot of the stage and looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Marcus Thorne," she said, her voice clear and carrying through the silent ballroom. "My name is Isabella Rossi. I am legal counsel for Eleanor Sterling Thorne." A collective gasp went through the room. Marcus's smile froze on his face. He looked from Isabella to Eleanor, who now stood a few feet away, her expression a mask of cold composure. "I am here," Isabella continued, her voice rising with theatrical precision, "to serve you with these." She held up a thick manila envelope. "These are divorce filings, citing adultery, and this—" She held up a second, even thicker envelope, which one of her associates handed to the chairman of the board, a stunned-looking man named Robert Henderson. "Is a formal notice of a lawsuit against you for the gross misuse of corporate funds, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty to Thorne Dynamics and its shareholders." Panic flared in Marcus's eyes. "This is ridiculous. It's a private matter. This is not the time or the place." On the contrary, Isabella cut in her voice, like steel. "This is precisely the time and place. You built your empire on a foundation of public trust. It seems only fitting to correct the record publicly." She turned to the stunned board members and the ravenous press. "Over the past 6 months, Mr. Thorne has systematically embezzled an estimated $1.7 million from corporate accounts to fund a lavish lifestyle for his mistress, a Miss Chloe Decker, a Wharton intern at his company." She gestured vaguely towards the back of the room where Chloe had turned white as a sheet. All eyes followed her gesture. Chloe looked like a cornered animal, her ambition curdling into sheer terror. "We have receipts," Isabella announced, her voice booming. "We have bank records, Shell Corporation leases. We have evidence of fraud that is being delivered to the SEC as we speak. But more than that, we have visual confirmation." This was Eleanor's cue. She stepped forward. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was so clear and cold that it commanded absolute silence. "Marcus," she said, looking directly at her husband, who now seemed to shrink on the stage. You told me you were in London. You told me you were working." She held up her phone and turned it so the screen faced the crowd. She had the video cued. She didn't press play. She didn't need to. She just let the thumbnail image of Marcus and Chloe toasting with champagne in her penthouse speak for itself. "You took her to the home I bought for our son," Eleanor said, her voice finally trembling, not with weakness, but with righteous fury. "You stood in my home, and you mocked me. You toasted to your future while you were destroying mine." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Board members were on their feet, their faces a mixture of shock and fury. Robert Henderson, the chairman, was already on his phone, his voice sharp and urgent. Marcus stood frozen on the stage, his face ashen. The illusion of the Titan had shattered, revealing the small, deceitful man underneath. He looked at Eleanor, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. He had been so thoroughly, so publicly, so perfectly checkmated. Eleanor didn't wait to see the rest. She had done what she came to do. She turned her back on her husband, on the life they had built, and on the empire that was now crumbling around him. With Isabella Rossi at her side, she walked calmly and deliberately out of the ballroom, leaving the ruins of Marcus Thorne's world behind her. As the heavy doors swung shut, they muffled the sound of a king being dethroned. The fallout from the Thorne Dynamics Innovation Gala was immediate and spectacular. The story was a supernova in the financial and society pages. Thorne's throne topples, screamed one headline, "Penthouse lies and videotape, CEO's empire crumbles," read another. Marcus Thorne's downfall was as swift as it was brutal. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting the very next morning. Faced with irrefutable evidence of embezzlement and the looming SEC investigation, they voted unanimously to remove him as CEO and chairman. His stock options were frozen, his corporate assets seized. He became a pariah overnight, the man who had flown too close to the sun on wings of arrogance and deceit. Chloe Decker vanished. Fired from the company and publicly shamed, she deleted her social media, broke her apartment lease, and disappeared back into the anonymity from which she had so desperately tried to escape. She became a footnote in the scandal, a cautionary tale whispered among future interns. Eleanor, guided by Isabella Rossi, navigated the ensuing legal storm with quiet dignity and strength. The divorce was settled quickly and decisively. Given the overwhelming evidence of both financial misconduct and infidelity, Marcus had no leverage. Eleanor received a settlement that was not just generous, but just. It secured her and her son's future 10 times over. But she didn't want Marcus's blood money to define her. She sold the penthouse on Park Avenue. The space, once a symbol of her dreams, now held too many ghosts. With the proceeds from the sale and a portion of her settlement, she established a new foundation. She called it the Sterling Foundation for New Beginnings. Its mission was to provide grants and support systems for single mothers seeking to start their own businesses, a cause that now resonated deep in her soul. 2 months after the gala, in the quiet, early morning hours, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. She had been so sure it was a boy, a detail Marcus had simply made up. Holding her daughter for the first time, Eleanor felt a wave of love so pure it washed away the last remnants of bitterness. She looked down at the tiny, perfect face and knew exactly what to name her. Hope. A year later, the city looked different to Eleanor. She lived not in a sprawling mansion or a sky-high penthouse, but in a beautifully restored brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. It was a home filled not with priceless art, but with laughter, the smell of baby powder, and the messy, wonderful chaos of a life being truly lived. From her office, where she personally reviewed grant applications for her foundation, she could see the distant spires of Manhattan. The skyline no longer represented an empire she had been a part of, but a world of possibilities she was now shaping on her own terms. One afternoon, holding Hope in her arms, she stood by the window looking out at the city. Her daughter gurgled happily, reaching a tiny hand out to touch the glass. Eleanor was no longer Eleanor Thorne, the wife of a titan. She was Eleanor Sterling, a mother, a philanthropist, a founder. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and had not only survived, but thrived. She had torn down a gilded cage and from its ruins had built a true home and a lasting legacy. She hadn't just found justice, she had found herself. And in her arms, she held the future bright and full of hope. 2 years had passed. In the fast-moving currents of New York City, 2 years can feel like a lifetime. The scandal of Marcus Thorne had faded from a roaring blaze to embers, a cautionary tale whispered at cocktail parties, before being replaced by the next corporate implosion, the next public disgrace. In its place, a new narrative had quietly, firmly taken root, the story of Eleanor Sterling. Her new life was a tapestry woven with purpose and peace. The Sterling Foundation for New Beginnings had become a celebrated success, a beacon in the city's philanthropic scene. Eleanor was no longer just a society name. She was a respected founder, praised in magazines like Forbes and Fast Company for her shrewd investments in female entrepreneurs. Her Brooklyn Heights brownstone was a home, not a showroom. Its walls, once bare, were now covered in finger paintings and photographs of a chubby-cheeked, laughing toddler. Hope was the sun around which Eleanor's world now revolved. At 2.5, she was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, with her mother's bright, intelligent eyes and a stubborn streak that was entirely her own. Eleanor's days were a gentle rhythm of mornings in the park, afternoons in her sunlit office, reviewing business plans, and evenings filled with bedtime stories and lullabies. The trauma of her past life felt distant, like a story she had read about someone else. The ice that had formed around her heart had melted, leaving behind not a scar, but fertile ground from which this new life had grown. It was on a crisp Tuesday in October that an echo from that past life found its way into her sanctuary. It arrived not with a bang, but in a simple cream-colored envelope delivered with the day's mail to the Foundation's office. It was addressed to Ms. Eleanor Sterling, in a familiar, confident script that made the breath catch in her throat. There was no return address, but she didn't need one. Her assistant, a sharp young woman named Maria, had placed it on top of a stack of grant proposals. This one came by courier Miss Sterling, marked personal. Eleanor stared at the envelope, her hand hovering over it. For a moment, she was back in her Greenwich home, the cold dread seeping into her bones. She felt a phantom chill the memory of betrayal, so visceral it was almost physical. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she picked it up, her movements precise, and carried it into her private office, closing the door behind her. She slit it open with a silver letter opener, a gift from the first entrepreneur she had funded. Inside was a single sheet of heavy, expensive stationery. Eleanor, I imagine this letter is the last thing you ever expected or wanted to receive. 2 years is a long time. I have had nothing but time to reflect on the man I was and the cataclysmic mistakes I made. There are no words to properly express the depth of my remorse, not for the loss of my company or my reputation, but for the loss of you and the family we were meant to be. I was a man blinded by ego, and I will live with the consequences of that blindness for the rest of my days. I have been through extensive therapy. I have worked on myself away from the noise and the pressures that defined my old life. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I know I have no right to it. I am not asking for a second chance. I am writing to you today for one reason only: hope. She is my daughter. A fact that remains true despite all my failings. I see her in photos online, in the society pages, covering your foundation's good work. She is beautiful. She looks like you. A child needs her father, Eleanor. Whatever I was, she deserves the chance to know me as the man I am now. I am not seeking to disrupt your life. I am not asking for custody or to interfere with your parenting. I am simply asking for the chance to meet her, to let her know she has a father who, despite his unforgivable errors, loves her. I will await your response through counsel, if you prefer. I pray you will find it in your heart to consider this not for my sake, but for hers. Yours, Marcus. Eleanor read it once, then twice. The carefully crafted words, the performance of penitence, the weaponization of their child, it was all pure, undiluted Marcus. The letter wasn't an apology. It was an opening salvo, a strategic move. The serene calm of her office evaporated. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She stood up and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was demanding access. He was using their daughter as a key to unlock a door she had bolted shut and reinforced with steel. The old rage, the cold, calculated fury she had felt, watching that video, surged back, but this time it was different. It was mingled with a fierce, primal fear. Fear for hope. Fear for the peace she had fought so hard to build. That evening, after she put Hope to bed, her sister Sophia came over. Sophia, a practical, warm-hearted pediatrician, had been her quiet anchor through the whole ordeal. Eleanor handed her the letter without a word. Sophia read it, her expression hardening. "The nerve of this guy," she said, placing the letter on the counter as if it were contaminated. "A child needs her father. Noel. A child needs a good father. A stable, loving, present father. Not a narcissistic manipulator on a redemption tour." "But what if he's right, Soph?" Eleanor whispered the words, tasting like ash. "What if years from now, Hope resents me for keeping him away? What if she has questions I can't answer? He's still her biological father." "And that's all he is," Sophia said firmly, taking Eleanor's hands. "A biological fact. He's not the one who wakes up for her at 3 a.m. when she has a nightmare. He's not the one who kisses her scraped knees or reads 'Good Night Moon' 5 times in a row. You are her parent. You are her home. This," she tapped the letter, "is not about Hope. This is about him. This is his next move." As Sophia spoke, the fog of Eleanor's fear began to clear, replaced by the familiar cold clarity of strategy. Sophia was right. This wasn't about fatherhood. It was about public relations. After 2 years of silence, Marcus was plotting a comeback. And what better way to rebrand himself than as a penitent, loving father, desperate to connect with his estranged child? The media would eat it up. It was the first step to rebuilding his image, to rewriting his own story. Hope was not the objective. She was the tool. "He's trying to use her to get his life back," Eleanor said, her voice now steady. "Exactly," Sophia affirmed. "So you can't play his game. You have to make your own." The next morning, Eleanor Sterling made a call she hadn't made in a very long time. Isabella Rossi's office. "It's Eleanor Sterling for her," she said. Isabella came on the line instantly, her voice as sharp as ever. "Eleanor, I trust you're not calling to invite me to a gala." "Something like that," Eleanor said dryly. "Marcus has resurfaced. He sent a letter. He wants to see Hope." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "And so it begins," Isabella said, not with surprise but with weary inevitability. The second act. What's your play? That's why I'm calling you, Eleanor replied. I won't deny him outright. That would make me look like the bitter ex-wife and feed his narrative. But I will not allow him to use my daughter as a prop in his redemption theatre. I want to build a cage of conditions so meticulous, so restrictive that only a man genuinely committed to being a father would ever agree to it. A man like Marcus will refuse. A low chuckle came from Isabella. I love it. A legal labyrinth. What are you thinking? Supervised visitation only at a neutral therapeutic facility, for 1 hour once a month. He submits to a full psychological evaluation beforehand, conducted by a court-appointed professional. He pays for everything. He is not permitted to bring gifts, take photos, or have any other person present. All communication regarding scheduling goes through our lawyers. No direct contact. And there's a morality clause. If he so much as attempts to use these visits for his public image, a leak to the press, a social media post, all access is terminated permanently. We give him exactly what he asked for, a chance to know his daughter, but strip it of all the PR value he's actually seeking. Eleanor, Isabella said, the admiration clear in her voice. You've become more ruthless than I am. I'll have my team draft the agreement this afternoon. He'll have it by morning. Hanging up the phone, Eleanor felt a profound shift inside her. The fear was gone. The shock had passed. In its place was a renewed, steely resolve. She walked to Hope's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her crib, clutching a worn teddy bear. The battle she now understood was not over. Perhaps it never would be. Marcus was an echo that would likely reverberate through her life for years to come. But she was no longer the woman who had been shattered by his betrayal. She was the architect of her own life, the fierce protector of her daughter's peace. She would meet every echo with a wall of her own making, built of intelligence, strength, and a mother's unyielding love. She looked at Hope, her heart full, and knew she was ready for whatever came next. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a cheating husband caught on camera. It was a story about the deceptive gloss of a perfect life, and the unshakable strength of a woman who refused to be a victim. Eleanor Sterling could have crumbled, but instead she calculated. She could have screamed, but instead she planned. She used the very tools of her gilded cage, the wealth, the technology, the high-stakes world she lived in, to architect a justice that was as swift as it was absolute. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in holding on, but in strategically letting go and building something new and better from the ground up.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.